Welcome back to the Junkman's Adventures. I'm the Junkman, and we have Skull Crusher on the phone as usual. And welcome back to the podcast. If you've been listening to us, or if you're new to us, check the back catalog of all our podcasts and get subscribed and ring that notification bell here on YouTube so you know when we go live and you know when new videos are up, because we plan on doing these live with an interactive chat. So be looking out for that. Also, links in the description to Skull Crusher's Twitch channel, where we'll do a simulcast. So if you like Twitch better, we'll be streaming over there sometimes. So you'll want to follow him and turn on notifications over there on that platform. But anyway, thanks for watching, and let's get right into it. And well, Skull, another week's gone by, and we chat a little bit throughout the week and such, and I guess there's kind of been something on your mind. We always think about topics and stuff that we want to talk about here, and what's been on your mind? I mean, we both come from agriculture or a farming background. You still work kind of heavily in it, and something kind of that's kind of topical related to that. I think that you kind of had mind to talk about here. So I'll let you take the floor on this.
Well, we kind of lightly talked about it last week in the show, about the right to work on your machines.
Oh, right to repair. Yep.
Yeah, right to repair that John Deere is pretty much the forefront of all that in the headlines.
That, and I'll sidetrack you, but yeah, in the tech world, it's Apple. They basically make their stuff, so you can't open it up.
That doesn't surprise me.
I mean, yeah,
yeah. John Deere doesn't necessarily make everything that they just put their names on a lot of other stuff.
Well, before you get into your opinion on that, it's funny you bring that up, because I always think of John Deere kind of as like the Harley Davidson of agriculture, or the ag business, because they license a lot of things. Unlike Harley, there is some innovation there, but but they put their name on a lot of different things, whereas other companies focus narrowly on their product line, whereas John Deere wants that green and yellow all over the place, even if it's on something like kids' underwear or whatever. But anyway,
yeah.
I digress. Yeah. But I kind of always think of them in a similar comparison to Harley Davidson. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to kind of go over like maybe some pros and cons to all that. And so like I think a pro to it, and we probably won't dive into this too much, maybe unless you want to, but I think a pro to it is it's just a sign of innovation, and it might be the tip of something down the road to come, that we just don't know about yet.
So you're getting towards like, well, kind of the proprietariness of some of the technologies that are going to be in.
I'm just
some of the stuff.
It's not so much about the prior. I can't even say that word. Anyways, it's more about the innovation and the moving forward, and we don't know, haven't seen where this could lead, technology wise. So maybe I'm just hoping maybe in some ways this might be good.
Well, I mean, you're going to get to the cons here, and I know my opinions on it. I'll try to be level on this. I have, of course, some opinions because I'm a DIYer, as you are, and and of course my family's still heavily in agriculture and farming and stuff. Um, yeah, I guess some of the pros is maybe some of the convenience. I guess I kind of look at it like, if you're gonna buy into like a condo complex or something, you don't have to worry about certain maintenance items and things. That's just rolled into your cost of living there, and maybe that's a pro for this for large corporate farms and things like that. Uh, Maybe that's a part of the good thing, efficiency in when things do go down. Uh, but I know some of this has to do with, and again, I'm not highly versed in this, but the idea around somewhat even copyright law is like, well, like we were talking cars and stuff the last couple podcasts, and the whole idea around right to repair is okay, you can't modify things. Partly, they don't want you modifying it. John Deere,
Yeah.
or using the Apple example, is Apple tells you how to use it, so John Deere's telling you how to use it or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, but that might be, like I said, good for certain type of operators. It takes the guesswork out. Can use more lower skilled labor, I guess, to operate some of their equipment and things. I guess centered around, except for centered around even maintenance, general maintenance stuff. Or repair items, I guess I could say. Maybe that's part of that.
Yeah.
But what's the flip side, I guess? I mean, what your opinion? What's the flip side?
Um.
On the the cons, I kind of led you into it. But,
I know, and my mind just went blank. I had it all there.
Sorry. Yeah, that's okay. Hey, we're working without a net here,
I do know, like, I think on pro wise, as far as farmers go, like, coding is getting so much easier. It's getting taught in school. I shouldn't say easier. It's getting taught in schools, and not just like college. I mean, it is in college, but even high schools, you can get taught.
Right.
And so kids today, I see like the farmer, like the farm, like when these tractors get down to like what our farms would be, the kids would be able to possibly hack into it. Now, I didn't know about the Apple part. That might actually make it quite a bit harder. But
well, and not to sidetrack here, like with the Apple thing, and there's a tech channel that I watch called Linus Tech Tips. He's well known if you watch computers, anything computer stuff, and I mean, he's a PC master race kind of thing, but has Apple products and gives them a fair shake. But like, for example, like their Mac Pros and stuff, which is their equivalent to a desktop machine, a desktop PC. They are they can, everything that has been put together can be taken apart in one way or another, but they put them together in certain ways that make it nearly impossible unless you have, in Apple's case, okay, you can take the chassis apart, but even some things are kind of glued together. So you're having to cut glue lines to get things open. But even then, when you get in there, like the circuit boards and things, like, for example, I don't know how our audience here, if they know a lot about just regular PCs and things. For example, what I'm recording this on is a PC that I built. Okay, I bought the CPU. I can plop it in a socket, pull a little lever, and it goes in. I can pop RAM sticks in. I can pop a graphics card in, and the other parts, and make it like I want, and then load in this case Windows, and we're off to the races. Apple things, and this has been an ongoing thing, but more so now than ever, they're soldering that chip on the board. So you can't upgrade it. Like, I can pull my CPU out, buy in this case, buy the latest gen chip, because my motherboard will support it, and do some upgrades and get, potentially like 7-8 years out of some of the base hardware just by upgrading the most important things like the CPU, RAM. Their RAM is soldered to the board, so a RAM module goes out, it is not really usable or serviceable because you got to unsolder every one of those pins, and there's, oh, I forget, and it's something like there's 88 or something pins on there. So I mean that's almost not user serviceable. And now I have not seen modern John Deere tractors, but that's kind of I think the idea that they're kind of going down is making things so like maybe proprietary fasteners and that. I'm not sure if they're doing that, but like some things have security fasteners in it. Now, of course, there's always going to be a tool to undo that, but I mean, making it so the average guy doesn't have that tool, so he can't change a starter, for example, on there. I don't know if that's a thing, but
that makes sense because what I was reading, and this kind of goes towards the cons on John Deere, is they were coming out saying that they just didn't want the farmer just like going in there and changing something and then finding out that it actually screwed up the whole tractor.
Yeah, but see, that's been since the beginning of time, almost, with mechanized farming. And I'll tell my little history, abridged history on what I think of John Deere after we kind of get going here, and that's going to address kind of that point. My beef with John Deere, I guess, just overall as a company and how they have been over their history. They make a good product. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's more of an observation, I guess, not a beef, I guess. But
yeah,
I get that. Automobiles are like that too, or cars. Why did I call them automobiles? We don't talk like that. Because you put inferior parts and things, and that could affect warranty and all that. But seems like we've ran, well over 120 years on, like some sort of mechanized modes of transportation, without that being a huge factor or burden on the manufacturers. I mean, they have contingencies and legalese written in to, warranties and stuff on that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm not sure why, in this case, like John Deere is thinking they need to clamp down on that. They own the intellectual property. Case IH or AGCO or whatever over here can't just, until the patents run out, can't just grab that idea and go. And a farmer, can't and sell it. I mean, he can make his own little modification, but it's transformative. I mean, that's where it's getting into almost, they're trying to use copyright law, as in like this podcast. Somebody could download this, make a nice remix, YouTube poop that's funny and makes fun of us. And honestly, I wouldn't have too much grounds to have it taken down or call that copyright, because, I mean, if they uploaded it in its entirety, that's different. But if they changed it around and sentence mixed and stuff, that's transformative work, and that's fair use, I guess. And I don't understand how people can't. I mean, people are seeing that, but how the average person cannot see that, being able to repair your tractor or your combine, or even do some modifications to it, isn't a form of transformation. Now, I agree, John Deere doesn't have to support the product if it's been modified. That's totally fair. I mean, that's reasonable, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, and or even like even if they went in, like, say it's obviously you screwed up the computer, so they need to go back and reprogram it. Even if they went back and said, okay, well, technically it's only going to cost them like a service hour or whatever, and the guy really, all he has to do is plug something in, delete the old files, put in new files, whatever. But I don't understand why they couldn't just like say, well, this is going to be an exorbitant amount because we don't want you. We're gonna hit you where the pocketbook is, so that you don't um go do this because it's going to cost you a lot.
But see, I go back to, you know, programmers on vehicles and even tractors have been around, and you know, they're taking the original Flash and uploading their own. And granted, verbiage is depending on what they're doing, can void the warranty. Okay, and that's done at your own risk. But I mean, that flash of that program to run that engine a certain way, again, that's a it's a transformative work. Somebody created that flash.
Yeah.
It's almost harkens back to early computing days. I don't know how much you know about this, but you know, like the BIOS settings. You know, IBM, you know, tried to, you know, claim copyright infringement on certain other little startup computer companies when things were just getting going, and but they, I think either they lost or there wasn't really a case there because the other ones reverse engineered it, but it was still different. I mean, functionally it was the same, so it could be compatible, but it was different, even though it functioned just like an IBM. And that's how I look at stuff like this, like the programming or whatnot, and why this falls into the whole repair part. I have no idea. I mean, I'd have to research it some more. It sounds like you have actually, so maybe I'm missing something.
I have a little bit. I'm not going to claim to be any expert.
Well, no. This is a discussion, and leave a comment down below, folks, if I'm totally way off base here. Okay. But anyway, go ahead. Like I said, you've done a little more research on this than I have. I'm just taking it face value. You know?
I just I just think I also kind of wondered down the road, like, okay, right now it's the only person it really affects are what I would consider rich farmers, be the ones that can afford to buy the tractors brand new off the line,
or corporate farms,
or corporate farmers, and I just kind of wonder what's going to happen when it trickles down to, say, someone like, it got down to the point where it's cheap enough that one of our former farms would have been able to afford one.
You're talking, where's the secondary market for all this stuff?
Yeah, and how I guess how long is that going to be where, to the point where all the proprietary stuff is not copyrighted anymore, or is it that's where I really see, like, that's where because those kind of people actually work on their stuff, instead of taking it, that's not necessarily taking it to the dealer when something breaks, unless they absolutely have to.
Yeah,
that's where I see them getting hacked into, and by then you're not worried about a warranty either.
Well, exactly.
You don't care about your warranty then, because it's been long gone.
Exactly. Yeah, most of them.
unless you, and I mean this as a joke, unless you got called by one of those scammers and they extended your tractor warranty.
Yeah, actually, I wonder why that isn't a deal. Probably because the Indians. Well, the Indians they don't have the. I mean, they have mechanized farming, but not. They probably figure that most people that's a small enough market that it's not worth going after, I suppose. I don't know. It's not a small enough market to scammer, or maybe it's the Nigerians that do it. I don't know. One of the two.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Well, and here I guess I'll kind of go into my sort of my thoughts on John Deere as a whole. That's why it's frustrating that they're I don't want to say leading the charge on this, but they're involved in it. Yeah, I can totally see companies like some of the auto manufacturers, or like Tesla or some of these other uh, wannabe startups or whatever, and like Apple, it makes like that's kind of you figure a given in more of the electronic space. But anyhow, my my thoughts just overall on John Deere uh, is it's and I don't have this history. This is off my head, and from watching, I've watched a lot of over the years, and I enjoy watching because they're all up on YouTube now. Is old like dealer promo films and stuff, literal films that you'd go when you go to like a dealer days or Husker Harvest Days
I've
type of.
I actually been to a John Deere one.
Well, we used to go all the time. Our local the local dealership that was in town there, John Deere and the other ones, and they still do that, for their customers and things. I think I think it's less of a thing because with the internet, you don't need to get people in a room to talk about the new
Mm.
product or and services and things. But back in the day, they would show films and videos, but way back in the day, literal films, and I've watched them from them all, and it's kind of fun for someone like me who that's a lifetime away, removed from me, um, and but it with YouTube and stuff, and you watch enough of these, you're able to reach back to that time. And I've watched ones like from Alice Chalmers and Case, and then also Farmall. So before those mergers, and then John Deere's, and it's interesting. The ones from the 30s, late 30s, and such. Um, there was a lot. I mean, John Deere's kind of claim to fame as the moldboard plow, and whatnot. And they had some other things, and rightly so. They kick started a lot of the modern farming. I mean, they didn't make the first tractor, but they probably made the first popular tractor, I guess, kind of like the Model T, you could say. I mean, a lot of that credit goes to the Fordson as well, mostly for the smaller affordable farms and stuff. But really, when I watch a lot of that, and then if you dive into old sales numbers and even the literature, um, John Deere was getting its getting its tail. Everybody else was eating their lunch, I guess. The McCormick Deering, the Farmall tractor, and they're just the line. They had like 30 different models, and for all types of farmers, and then industrial stuff too. So you like your road construction building, and you got to remember this is the industrial boom of this country, and then same with Alice Chalmers, the way it started out, making affordable tractors, and then all different kinds of things. And these companies were more built as conglomerates. They acquired early on. That was a new thing, whereas John Deere mostly stayed kind of like their own independent and grew more organically, which is commendable in itself. But when you look through like their milestone tractors, of course everybody remembers the GP and the A and the B and the Model D and stuff like that, and they have their significant places in history, and no doubts about it. But when you look at their competition, those old Johnny Poppers, those twin cylinders going pop 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 pop, lots of torque and everything, and yes, simple design, and that. But man, those things looked outdated compared to their competition, who had four-cylinder gas engines, four-cylinder diesels, and of course ones that also ran on kerosene, and at the time something what they called tractor fuel and such. John Deere's ran on those too, and then John Deere later had some diesels, Johnny Popper diesels. But it's funny. I ran across a John Deere promo dealer video. I forget the exact date, and it might have been it was definitely pre-war, but just like 1940. I mean, just before the war, and you could tell they were struggling to sell this now almost 25-year, at least 15, if not 25-year old technology. Like their tractors really hadn't changed. They went from, other than styling, the design was just old. Whereas your Alice Chalmers, your J.I. Case, your Farmalls, that would later be um, International Harvester, obviously they just looked modern because they had like car-like engines, four cylinders, six cylinders, lots more power, more features and things. And they're only that John Deere sales film from, I want to say, 1940, and I forget the exact model they were showcasing, but they tore it apart and they says, "Look at how many main bearings you have to replace in this," and it was a exploded view of probably a like an Farmall F20 at the time or something like that. Or maybe it was an M. Actually, it probably was an M or an H, Super M. So, no, wait a minute. That's later. Never mind. Yeah, it's probably the F series. Well, anyway, doesn't really matter. But it was a four-cylinder engine out of their competition, and they're like saying, "Look here, six main bearings. That's six bearings, and that's cost you a lot to rebuild the engine. And same with six pistons, and and two rings per piston, and an oil ring, and all this. They had a cost out. And now look at John Deere. You have two pistons and only three main bearings, and only three speeds. So you only have three gears to wear out, and just I mean, whereas." And it kind of ties into this whole right to repair. It's like, okay, back then, when the twin cylinder that was the deal, because they were built off of basically the old hit and miss, but just make it bigger and a little more efficient, relatively speaking. People would rebuild the tractors in their sheds. Well, these as the farming was progressing, these four-cylinder engines, yes, more comparatively more complicated, and I'm sure the old timers that bought their first tractor replacing their horse looked at this as like, ooh, that's scary. Too many parts, all these valve springs and camshafts and everything, and magneto, and what's that, and magneto, and for ignition, and governors, that were all enclosed and things, instead of old flyball governors they're used to, that they could see and understand. So I kind of get it. I get the marketing, but it's like it was pretty obvious that they were reaching, and I again, you look at the sales stuff, they were really losing ground a lot, to especially McCormick Deering or the Farmall, and later, and then you get into the 50s, until they drop. But then it's almost like they just let their stuff be stagnant for the year after, and we're talking about after the war here, stagnant, and while everybody else progressed, but then all of a sudden John Deere drops the bomb of the new generation of power, these 4 and 6 cylinder diesel tractors, making 50 to 70 PTO horsepower and stuff, and then just all of a sudden they just change the game. So it's like, and I almost wonder if it's they sat around. It feels like they sat around and watched and let Alice, especially like Alice Chalmers, do all that R&D and with those that type of engine, and get people hooked on it, so they didn't have to market that. And then it's like, see, we have it too, but it's better. And it was. I mean, it was. And if those out there don't know what I'm talking about the 30 series and 30 and 40 series, and most notably 65, the 40-20. But really it was the 30-10, 30-20, when those came out in 1960. But then it's like, okay, they were riding this wave, and of course the rest all caught up with them. And then it's kind of like, I look at the same thing in the combines, is they kind of waited till patents ran out, and so they could quote steal or use other people's designs. Like, Gleaner had, Gleaners or the Baldwin brothers, had some innovative ways for the feeding mechanism. Massey Ferguson had different designs with their concave and cylinders for better threshing. And then, of course, International with their rotaries in the late 70s. Because now everybody, then John Deere had later, after those patents run out, then they had their twin rotor and say, see, look at us, the SDS or whatever, you need, they let the other companies do the R&D and then they just swiped it. Something I'm kind of partial to is the rubber crawler tractors, Caterpillars, the Cat Challengers, pioneered that type of agricultural tractor on tracks. And then what was it after kind of had been on the market a while? What did they do? I don't know if you want to say copied the design, but it looked damn similar. Of course, now New Holland owns that, but they had their track tractor. So that's kind of my I guess beef with John Deere, and then into this right to repair, because they usually just buy up somebody's design or copy it, and then of course, because of the almighty Deere, that green there, people just eat it up, when really some of these other companies did a lot of the R&D for them. Or
well, that kind of reminds me. It's funny that you say that, because so when I was in college, we went to the New Holland. Well, now it's New Holland Case plant in Grand Island.
Yeah, I've been there. I know.
Where they make.
I was there when it was still J.I. Case, but yeah, it was Agco in New Holland, right?
Yeah, that's where they build the combines. I don't know if that's the only plant that builds combines in the nation, but that's where they build a lot of those combines. Mm-hmm. And what you were saying just reminded me. So when we were there, they had just like a few years before that, Ford had just sold them, because it used to be Ford New Holland.
Yep.
Well, the people that were taking us around, they told us, they said Ford literally bought them so that they could see what their prints looked like. And once they had their technology, they turned around and they sold them. And that's how they ended up with Case.
That might be true. That sounds true.
It's not. So what I'm saying is, it's not necessarily John Deere that's just stealing other designs.
Well,
it's like it's
well, it's not so much what I meant stealing. It's almost more like John Deere waits till certain patents.
Well, yeah. Well, and I shouldn't say stealing designs, but yeah, you're right. I know what you mean. They're waiting till patents run out, and then they're incorporating those ideas into their equipment.
Yeah, and you know what? And you gotta. Now, here's the thing. It sounds like I'm bashing John Deere, but you gotta really commend how they've managed to, I don't want to say survive, because they were never in trouble of like going bankrupt ever. It's just how they've managed to be a leader in the market while following the market, because when I think of sort of the history of modern, as agriculture got more modern, and especially the kind of more the explosion really happened in the late 60s and the 70s, you had like those companies like Alice Chalmers, and of course International. International, both of those companies were going global, and John Deere not so much. I mean they did have presence, but not like I'm thinking not like International Harvester. They were literally global. They were into, obviously trucks and somewhat cars. They were very diverse, I guess, and Alice Chalmers was the same thing. They had stationary engines, they had construction, they had oil field kind of equipment. But it's funny, if you look at those companies, they all started having trouble. And J.I. Case, same thing. And I forget which one. I think International bought Case, or vice versa there in the early 80s, something like
I think
that.
no, I think it was Case about
Maybe
International.
it was Case that bought International.
Cause the only reason I say that is because if you think about it, it's Case IH.
Yeah, maybe you're right. And but see then like the competitors, like Alice Chalmers, uh, they were having troubles and they got acquired by I think it was Do- uh,
Aren't they
White.
Agcro or
Well,
whatever it's
well,
called?
White first. Then it was like
Oh,
Then it was like uh, I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Dutz. Uh,
that's far.
Dutz Far. That's it. So it was Dutz Alice, and then they kind of just got homologated. I mean, then same with then Ford came into the deal, and then like I said, then they conglomerated to Agco, and now they're something else, right? Like CNH or
No,
something, or are they still
I
Agco?
thought I think they're still Agco.
Well, anyway, that shows I'm a little out of touch. I'm
Yeah,
just
I mean, I am too.
but I guess the thing
Not into
is
this as much as I used to be, but
John Deere didn't have to acquire I mean, they did acquire some more for their tillage equipment, of course, but acquire companies to their and then fold it under the John Deere brand, whereas the other ones kind of got all messy, and I don't know where the problem is. Maybe it's a little like the GM syndrome. They just got too big and couldn't manage themselves a little bit. It's not a perfect analogy with GM because that was more of a they were worried about the government, thinking they were going to have too much of a monopoly on the auto market. Whereas I don't think that was a real concern with the tractor or agricultural manufacturers. But John Deere stayed the course through those bad times and didn't have to leverage as much. So that's the thing is you gotta applaud them for how they've uh, stayed fairly, I guess you'd call it independent, maybe, or um, not having the problems that their competition necessarily had. But to that point, um, again, they took a lot of ideas uh, from earlier other companies that came out with some of that earlier, like especially like in the hydraulic areas. I can think of like uh, okay, I'm going back to some of these films I've watched. I saw one John Deere film that was showing the prototype of like these new generation stuff. So it was like there was test tractors and stuff, and I noticed the rear wheels looked odd because I'm like, I've never seen that in any sales brochures or nothing, and I don't know that that was an option, because we have those tractors, okay. Um, well, they had the adjustable tread widths that Alice Chalmers had always had since their earliest some of their earlier like the WC models from like 20 years ago, and it's like that's interesting. And then there's some of the like the load balancing IH and Alice had that too, and then they incorporated it, so it's almost like um, and things like with the 3-point attachments and things. Of course, some of that was again proprietary that Ford actually had, the Fordsons. Um, Ford actually had that, and everybody else had to kind of come up with their own design. But then when that patent ran out, everybody went and International basically re-engineered or reverse engineered it. But anyhow, I'm just it's like not that they don't have their own original ideas. It's just some of them. It's like the things they tout as new. It's like some of these earlier tractors had that, um, but they're touting it kind of as a new feature. It's just it was an odd feature back then because it was maybe ahead of its time, and then John Deere waits till it's the right time. So I don't know. It just seems like that. Some of their design elements in their combines over the years that I've noticed back when I used to kind of watch and keep up on this stuff. But again, these days I'm so out of touch with it. I'm probably wrong. So take it for what it is.
I, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, take what we're saying for, I mean, what it is.
We're just BSing, and
we're
there's
just
some
giving
bias
our
here.
we're just giving you. I mean, we're just giving our opinions.
Yeah.
We're just two guys giving an opinion.
Yeah, for all the
With
hundred, for the whole 100 people that are going to see that if they get this far.
yeah.
Come on, you got to have some self-deprecating humor in there, but it's and actually, because I knew we were going to talk a little bit, you know, this is a toy of one of the tractors I grew up with, or the good old 4430. I mean, and again, another iconic tractor from them, and a pretty changed the industry a little bit from a comfort standpoint, but
See, I think we had the 3020s.
you guys probably did. Well, we have a 3010, 4020. This would be
We
late.
might have had. I think we had one. I think we had one of each. We might have had a 3010 and we had a 3020, but they weren't our. They weren't like our go in the. They weren't our go to the field of disc
No,
or anything.
they were
They
they,
were.
they were for my dad, but no, they were utility tractors when I was little. This was the go to the field tractor, like row crop planting, and then we had in the same series we had the 8430, which is the articulated four-wheel drive, and that was the you call it the tillage tractor, or where you did most of your pulling. Now that's the thing. Even in our day, not every farm had two, what I quote, big tractors. Everybody had something that they used as a utility loader tractor, especially, or feeding tractor if they had cattle or
And
something.
that's what we used it for during the summer. Was we used them for feed. I was trying to think if we used them for anything else, but I don't remember us do. See, we also had internationals, and our internationals were our workhorses.
Yeah, wouldn't those probably? I vaguely remember those were probably well, they're probably later than like the 1066. They're probably what like 1086 or something like that.
I don't know what the one is. The other one I thought was if I remember right, it was like a 5066 or something like that.
Okay, so they're earlier then. Okay.
It actually the one was, it must have been like, it almost looked like it was something that came out, like Case had already bought International, but they hadn't
Rebranded.
changed the name. They hadn't changed the name of them yet, so it was still an International, but it looked a lot like a Case.
Okay, so yeah, so those were probably been in the
But it was, I remember that tractor. It had a turbo in it.
So it was a turbo diesel. Well, like I said, the
Yeah.
430s and the 84 were turbo diesels. But yeah, that was another thing that I want to say other manufacturers did first. Probably International, but I could be wrong on that. Uh, Having on their models, having turbos versus and of course a lot of people well, either you love them or hate them with those internationals. There's um, the hydrostatic drive, where like a tractor like this. I mean, John Deere eventually come out with their version of it, but again, they kind of let International suss out the teething problems with a hydrostatic drive, because I know some of those. If you overworked them, you just tore them up in there. They worked fine as long as you didn't say, like, if it was rated for a 16-foot disc and you put an 18 on there, or bigger, obviously, you're technically, the horsepower, it should pull it, but the transmission couldn't hold it. Um, and
I
even
don't
then, John Deere
I
had
don't remember.
some of those problems too. But
I don't think we ever had any problems with
well,
anything like that.
as long as they weren't, as long as you didn't overuse too big of equipment with them, because some guys I know, which is wrong from an efficiency standpoint, though, is like, okay, they'll just, field weight the tractor appropriately, but that's just putting a lot of strain on it, even though technically, by the specifications, it says you can pull that. It's just, you hit a hard spot and you're going to start breaking things. trust me, I kind of know from some experience, but I just remember some of those internationals got a bad rap in certain areas of the country purely for that, and I think John Deere capitalized on that. But later they would come out with their own power shift and shift on the fly stuff, where the earlier tractors didn't. But I got to say, those internationals of that era that you're talking about, probably the best feed tractors ever, because you had that finite. I mean, now all tractors have that, but I mean back then that was a luxury to have that finite control for rolling along those feed bunks with your feed wagon. But we didn't do that. But I just heard from neighbor farmers and stuff who had them and whatnot. I always liked the looks of them. I thought they looked pretty cool. That slanted
and
cabs.
I still think the one that I drove looked really cool. So, got to be one of my favorite tractors.
Yeah. Again, like I said, we're getting old, but it's like I look at the modern stuff and it just and just like with cars and stuff, they're better. Again, like cars, tractors are probably in a lot of ways better than they ever have been from all standpoints. But gosh, with all that plastic and fiberglass and all that, just seems like that tractor, while it's going to function, more than likely going to function just fine in 30 years, it's going to look its age. It's going to look ratted out. I mean, even like this tractor here, all the body here is all steel and everything. Of course, that's going to fade a little bit, but the top of the cab, because you had to be able to flip that up to get to the air conditioner condenser and blower motors and all that stuff. So this was either like a fiberglass or plastic, and I tell you, it would get brittle and then just fade and look terrible on these tractors. But today it's like the whole tractor's going to look like that because of all that hood and fenders and all that stuff. But and it's made with that soy. A lot of that's made with like soy plastic and stuff. And I know it's got UV inhibitors in there, but these tractors in 50 years, I just don't know that they're going to be in use, because they're just going to be as much as like the older stuff, just purely from a almost some of it functionality standpoint, because it's just going to rot. Some of the parts and controls inside the cab are just going to rot, like the handles and stuff. I remember, because the other ones, just sat outside. I remember some of that rubber, you'd go to grab that lever for the PTO to engage the PTO, and then it's like got that sticky stuff all over your hands, because even at that time the tractor was 35 years old, when I was running it. And now, I mean, we're still using it and it's 50 something years old, and you just yeah, I just can't imagine what these tractors are going to be like that with, they got like leather seats and stuff. I mean, and seat warmers and all that, and or whatnot, comfort stuff. Just as that stuff just starts rotting away, what is it gonna be like in those things? I don't know, but that's always the thing. Like with
you might have to clip the wires. You might get shocked wired.
Well, that's true.
Going through your field.
Yeah. Well, of course, with
you hit a bump wrong, and the mouse that chewed the wire into you might get a little surprise.
Well, I mean, heck, I mean, even before we're dead, I mean, they already really have self-driving tractors. They just really haven't got it down to
Yeah,
so much so it can turn on the end of the field uh, as much. I mean, it's just not. It's the technology hasn't scaled enough to trickle down yet. But I mean, it will. It will. And um, but that's a thing. That's how farming has changed. It's not sitting in the tractor going like this all day. It's business sense, and I think that's circling around. I think that's part of, so maybe part of where this sort of right to repair ideas come in is, you're going to only need half the labor force you needed to operate the equipment. The rest of it is scheduling and seed and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's even it was changing when we were young, but it's really changed now. I mean,
yeah.
um,
Well, and that's where I was, I guess, kind of wanting to go with all this. Is it? I didn't necessarily want to harp on it being good or bad too much. I wanted to kind of get into, well, technology, how is it going, kind of, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, I think you said it best with the, it's things are changing
yeah.
for.
Well,
Yeah.
everything changed, and you say that, and it's funny. Like what we're doing right now. I'm people who know me. It's funny. I am. I can be a Luddite in some areas of my life, meaning I don't want that aspect or thing to change. But in other aspects, I openly embrace the new way to do it, like what we're doing here. And this is a topic for another podcast to get to dive in. Is I've always been making some sort of content with a video camera or writing or drawing or something. I'm not really a writer, but creating something either with my hands or this. And that's the thing. When YouTube came along, I just was like, I've been waiting for this. I have all these VHS tapes and all this stuff that I've made. I can. There's this thing called the internet, and now I can put it on there. It still wows me, and what we're doing right here wows the hell out of me. That I could do this. We can talk to the world, okay? But then when okay, uh, but then things like my car, my motorcycles, tractors. If I was still actively farming, uh, I would want it. I don't like even, and that's something that came in the '80s or '90s mostly, is electric over hydraulic control. So you're just clicking a button that then shuttles the hydraulic valve, rather than that handle to a linkage that then goes over to that hydraulic valve that actually, you're connected to it and stuff. Drive by wire, steer by wire, brake by wire, that all that kind of stuff where you're disconnected. I still want all that linkage there. I want to feel it. So I'm a Luddite in that kind of sense. But then like something like this and people are all like, streaming is great. Like that's a new thing. Hell no. I mean, it. I had my TV, my old CRT, hooked up to my computer back in 2004, and and then once YouTube came online, or online video, E-Bombs World and all that stuff, I was putting that up on my TV and streaming user-generated content way back then, when nobody knew what the heck streaming really was. But I'm not saying I'm on the forefront of this. It's just I embraced it. I saw it as a good thing. This is a good thing. We're conversation with the world. But like with my cars and tractors and motorcycles, I want that visceral mechanical feel to them, and that is slowly being taken away from us in certain ways, and that kind of circles around. Again, this is probably another topic for another day. But it's interesting your thoughts on this. I didn't know where you were going to go with this topic, but it really got me to thinking.
No, and when we were discussing if we should do it or not, or I kind of kept it under wraps, but I just like at the same time I was just like, nah, let's. I don't want to like go heavy into this is bad or this is good. I'm hoping this is thought provoking for whoever's listening.
Well, right, and that's the reason we're doing this. Is just the little topics. Maybe I'll spark some interest, or maybe a little bit different point of view on something like this.
And that's something
no
else
right
I
or
was
wrong.
trying to go with this.
With this, I don't know if there's a real right or wrong yet that we've seen, or what the lasting effects of it. Overall, I don't think it's the greatest thing, but there are aspects of the technology part that I think is really exciting. It's just more the legalese parts around it that concern me, and and some of the potential legislation that could come around because of it. And when you start getting that in there, and we won't and aren't going to get in politics on this show, but that's where I'll leave that. You guys can all form your own opinions on that, or how that could play out. But just from a pure technology standpoint, there's some things to consider before making a decision, and I need to be more informed on it. I openly accept that. So, but let's lighten it up just for the ending here. We're talking farming. Let's we want to do this in the future though. But farm sim games. I barely knew that they existed until you started streaming them. And what drew you to Farming Simulator? I guess, and a sim game like that. Because when I think sim games, I think The Sims. I knew there was others, but like popular, and I figured any other sim game was kind of halfway coded and throwaway kind of thing. But anyway, I that's one thing I've never asked you, like in person, in real life. What drew you to farm sims? It just doesn't seem your type. Just going back, it's like things like first person shooters like GoldenEye and stuff is what I think of, and Red Faction and whatnot. But how the farm sim games come about, I guess, for you.
Well,
and while you're doing it, it's like I've yet to download it, but I got mine in case we want to get going. But I'm scared to get into it. So tell me about it, I guess, because it could be a time sucker.
I guess initially the real reason that I'm into it so much is because, I mean, we talked about it earlier that we both grew up on farms. Well, I did a lot of disking when I was on the farm, right. And actually I actually really, really liked that. Just sitting in a tractor, going back and forth in the field all day long. I don't know why. It's relaxing.
I guess. Okay.
And so I miss that because I don't do that anymore. But that's kind of what drew me to the game. I took a chance. I had GameFly there for a little bit, and I was like, oh, I've heard about this game. I've never tried it before. So
GameFly, when they were still doing the physical copies?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think that was about the time I cut the cord because I got rid of my cable and satellite. Okay. I think I had satellite.
Well, cable, same thing. Satellite, I mean.
So I was like looking for things. I tried GameFly for a little bit. And I was like, well, I'll try this game because that was the whole point of me getting that, and I'm sure that's what everybody was doing. Is just like they wanted to try different things, and I was like, well, this game is really, really I can disc in it all day long and whatnot, and plant, and just got really into it. And so then when I sent the game back, I went and went on eBay and I started buying copies of it. Now, when I first started, I started on 15, and then when I bought the first copy, I went to 13. And
Okay.
something's different about if you buy Xbox 13, or I'm sorry, Xbox 360's Farm Sim 13 on their disc. For some reason, that plastic is so different. I cracked like 3 or 4 of them. I went through 3 or 4 copies.
Huh.
And
That's interesting.
so funny enough, I ended up through a weird thing, ended up with a PlayStation 3, and I bought a copy of it for that, and I had no problem with that one. I don't know, it's something about the plastic. But anyways, that's for something else. But anyways, I just kind of progressed from there. So I went back to, so I had 13, and then I went back to 15. And then I briefly had 17 when I bought my Xbox One, but by that time 19 had come out, and I wanted to get into 19. So thinking about it though, it's kind of funny. Like when I first started in anybody, I don't know of, like, you remember when we used to get video games, how you'd have to read the booklet they gave you because it told you how to play the game.
Well,
This control does this and that, and
yeah. Well, okay. We plan to do a video game topic, but yeah, just to get into it a little bit.
well,
I'm an Atari aficionado, and a lot of those you almost have to have the manual to really. Some of them you to really understand. I mean, the controls are easy, but some of them almost the manuals required to really fully understand and appreciate the game. But yeah, even in the Nintendo era, Legend of Zelda would be a good example of that. Is if you just try to pop that in, like a Zoomer would try to just pop that in and just play it, they could not figure it out. And
yeah.
I remember that would be how our experience if it did not have that pull-out map and all this stuff. So I get that, yeah. So this probably had more tutorial type. So you're saying like the Farm Sim has more tutorials.
They don't have, this game doesn't have a little booklet. There are tutorials built into the game. I've never done them. I've actually, everything I've done has been trial and error. There is a menu that is on your screen, so it kind of tells you how a little bit, and then everything else I've kind of learned from watching other YouTubers,
right,
streamers, and stuff.
That's the thing. We can look up a game and see, is this garbage, or how do you do that? What's the money? In this case, what's the money cheat, right?
But
if you want it.
Actually, well, there isn't a cheat anymore. It's a mod. That's
okay. Well, okay.
The cheats kind of got away with the modern technology.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I mess with emulators, and then I remember the game Genie and all that stuff. So.
Well, so this is kind of.
See, I'm showing my gamer age. It's like because I call them.
So you'll get
like
a kick out of this.
Money cheat, or whatever.
I think this is funny because this is how much I knew of the game when I first bought it, or first tried it out on gameplay. So in the game, the tractors actually get dirty. As the more you work them, the more hours you put on them, the dirtier they get. And you have to wash them with a pressure washer, otherwise you can't see out the windows and whatnot. Well, I didn't know, because I got this on GameFly. I'm trying it for a weekend, I didn't know anything about the game. I hadn't really had a chance to YouTube too much about it. So my tractor's getting dirty as I'm going along, and I can't figure out. I didn't know it was getting dirty. I just knew that it was getting harder and harder to see out the front windshield.
Oh,
And
so
I
you
was
didn't know you
like,
had to go and run the power washer in
I
game?
didn't, I didn't know. So well, in those versions of the game, they actually would run sales on the equipment that was like, like a $20,000 off a tractor or whatever. So, so when the tractor would get dirty, I would just take it to the dealership and sell it and go buy a brand new one.
Okay. Now that makes me think. Okay, now that this is totally unrelated, but it kind of is. It makes you think of a joke in a Beverly Hills 90210 episode when the character Steve, whatever Steve Ian Ziering, he drove that Corvette, and it's an episode where there's a kind of this gearhead, shop class guy has this, kind of hot rod car, and he wants to go do some illegal street racing and everything. And anyway, they're bantering back and forth, and he's like, "Whoa!" Because it was a Z1 or Z06 or whatever the hell the car was, in that era, the version of the Z06, if it wasn't the Z06, I think it was the Z1, they called it at the time. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But the guy joked about, he pops the hood and says, "Well, you got a great engine under there." And then Steve's like, "Oh, don't you just throw the car away when the oil gets dirty?" It's like don't you ever change the oil in this thing? It says, "Oh, I thought you just got rid of the car when the oil got dirty." Because he was a rich kid, and his mom was like on some TV, in the show, was on some TV show, so he's rich and spoiled. It was the whole joke, but that made me think of that, because it's like, oh yeah, just do it. The windshield got dirty, time for a new tractor.
Yep. Yeah, and then I was like, well, it was much later, that I found out, watching through some streams, that, oh, you gotta wash the tractor. But
yeah, well, I remember watching you stream, and you're sitting there messing with power washing, and I'm like, wow, why does that matter? Well, I guess it does. So.
Yeah, they thinking about it over the generations of it. So I started in 13. That was actually, I think, the first year they were on consoles.
Okay. Yeah, because it probably was a PC only for a long time.
It started as a PC only, and it slowly progressed. Like in 13, on consoles, now PC is a lot different, but on consoles, you can only you only had the one map.
Well, I'm sure it's kind of visually for early consoles, was a little too visually demanding, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And so you only had the one map. You had the ground would go on sale. Okay. And then the equipment would go on sale. And then in 15 they stopped doing the ground on sale, but they had two maps in 15. Maybe they had two. You know what? Now I'm thinking about it. They probably did have two maps in 13. I just never played the third one, the second one.
Oh, okay.
I always played the one map. I never played the other one, now that I think about it. And then 17 was the first time they added mods to console. And then 19, obviously, they just went from bigger from there.
Yeah. Yeah, but, like I said, and I held it up. I have my controller. It's just, and I need to buy and download the game and then get some mods, and we should stream together. But it's just like I'm afraid, finding the time, but it's just be a time sucker. But we'll do it sometime. I'll get probably won't be anytime soon, but we'll be streaming on your Twitch channel when we do that, more than likely, or we'll figure something out. We'll do figure out so people can watch me show them how with a joystick and buttons, how I can't figure out how to run a grain cart. We get Derek in on that, then he won't. I won't feel so bad, Like that time I was watching you guys do that. He was pretty bad, pretty bad driver, if I remember right. But anyway, well, I suppose, yeah, we've been going a little over an hour, and that's kind of what we like to try to do here. Well, I think we'll wrap this one up, and we'll see you next week. Like this video, subscribe, tell your friends, share it around. The more eyeballs or more listeners we get, the better it is. And watch out for when we actually go live for your chance to interact in the chat, because we'll definitely want to do some Q&A, and we want to hear your thoughts too, because sometimes it's a lot better with more of us in the party, so to speak. So I'm the Junk Man. Skull Crusher's out. Links in the descriptions to his Twitch channel. You're going to want to follow that. And thanks for listening. All right.